Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Today is Saturday, July 19th, 2025. So, about a year ago, there was a fake WWE style assassination attempt on Donald Trump, and I saw immediately how fake it was. So, this was my first video about that. Put Dementia Gate on hold. Donald Trump just got an ear pierced. And then, I went through it here 20 videos. I coined the phrases Ketchup Gate and Band Aid Gate and so and I'll go through some of this stuff here. Here he is with a Jesus thing on his maxi pad. And I made at least 20 videos. These are the ones I could find easily. There might be more. I guess there's 23 of them that reference this. Probably a few more that I missed that I didn't use the words ketchup or Band-Aid in the video. But I found as many of them as I could. And I'll document pretty much what I said during these videos, a narrative and, much more detailed videos. And I'm saying this because my viewers have made me aware that there are people now, dumb fuck Trumpers, people who buy into the Trump bullshit, people who claim to be truthers who completely whiffed on this event, who are now starting to copy some of my stuff or come up with similar stuff or whatever it is. And I want to talk about that a little bit, right? Because, you can see here from some of my titles, if you're not willing to consider Ketchup Gate, let me see if I open this one up, which I don't want to play. Greetings. If you're not willing to consider Ketchup Gate might be fake, you're not a truther, you're a sheeple. So need to deal with the space there that's missing. And I talked about this because one of my viewers some months after this, wrote a comment saying they had watched about 60 or so truthers talking about the assassination attempt, this fake fucking thing that happened. And, it was so WWE, and I'll get into that in a bit when I do the narrative. And only 3 of them questioned it. They weren't like, they were just questioning it. And as a truther, you have to question everything. And people were so hoodwinked by Donald Trump and they thinking he was somehow different and better and the whole Trump bullshit. In the truth community, they didn't even question it, right? Like here's the title of the playlist here. Trump's WWE style fakes a staged assassination attempt, aka Ketchup Gate, Band-Aid Gate, hashtag Ketchup Gate, hashtag Band-Aid Gate, and hashtag Poser. And they were so hoodwinked by what Trump did, and so, not in any way being truthers, they didn't question something that if it was Joe Biden, they so totally would have questioned it, especially with certain aspects of what Trump did. It was so fucking bogus and such bullshit, right? And these people didn't question it. Many of these, prominent people in the truth community, and they ceased to be truthers then. I mean, I'm not saying they had to come out and say it was fake, but on top of that, they would say things like, well, they did try to assassinate Trump and, Trump's out there fighting. In fact, there was many of them that were applauding Trump's bravado. People like Tucker Carlson, of course, they're not truthers, but people like Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, some of these other people calling Trump a badass and the fight thing. Even Democrats calling him a badass because he, put ketchup on his ear and pumped his fist and mouthed the words fight. A total fucking poser. And so now these guys are finally realizing that Trump is a piece of shit after so many years. And this is to document what I've known for a while, which is important because don't you want to get the truth as soon as possible? Like, do you want to wait fucking a year before dopes come around to realizing something's fake? And then they come in like they've cracked the code, like they've broken something when it's been talked about, at least by, some people in the truth community. Well, don't you want to be ahead of the game, right? And so let me start off with this comment here, and I'll show you a couple of clips. Okay, so this guy, one of my viewers sent me a video where they're talking about ketchup, this Ketchup Gate thing, now. And then another person sent me a video where they're claiming that there's some kind of staffer that's not where he's supposed to be, why he's there, this kind of thing, right? Before I go there, like I don't need to tell people how great I am, right? And not that I think I'm great, but I don't need to do that. Like I don't, I don't feel like I have to sell my stuff. I don't have to tell people how much better I am than other fucking YouTubers or why my stuff's better to watch or any of these things, right? I'm not telling people all the time subscribe and hit the like button. I just all that shit fucking annoys me, and it's not part of what I do. It's not part of my personality type. And I'm not comparing myself to other people. I say this all the time. That when you're on a spiritual path, you don't get graded on a curve. There's not like, well, you're at least better than that piece of shit over there. There's none of that, right? And there's no way to grade something like that because nobody knows what's in terms of no one has a clear view of what you were before, like how many opportunities you've had as a human. There's a lot of first timers out there. This is their first time as a human. And before they were something less. They were like an animal or something like that in terms of the transmigration of the soul. So somebody who has been around for a longer time and has had more shots at being a human being and has had more past lives with being spiritual in some way or another, then of course you should be farther ahead, right? And there's no way to gauge any of those things. So you can't compare yourself to everybody else and feel good about yourself and pat yourself on the back because it's what you're capable of. Are you doing your best, right? So like comparing your work or your anything in life to other people is not the way to go about it because it hurts your ability to grow and move forward and become better and better at things. It's always good to have goals and standards where you're wanting to get better and better at your craft, at your work, as being a husband, as being a father, all these different things, as being a farmer, like cutting out mistakes and seeing ways that you can hone, the amount of energy, the amount of time and effort you put into things, like doing things smarter and raise your level of consciousness. And spirituality is the biggest factor in all of that. That's something that, particularly spirituality, but also here on this YouTube channel. And so I don't really watch other truthers and I don't care what they're saying or not saying. And I, want there to be lots of different levels because there are different levels people are at and people need to find their own level, whether it be spirituality, whether it be being a truther, whether it would be any number of things, right? There's beginner levels and there's things out there that I suck at. And I'm glad they're like beginner videos and, like those books. I don't get those books, but those books, for dummies, right? Chicken farming for dummies or, novices. So I'm glad there's beginner levels out there. There's things out there that I need very remedial training because I have almost no knowledge. And, I'm glad there's YouTube videos of people who describe the simplest things for, people who are challenged in one way or another because that's good for all of us, right? To have beginner level content and higher level content. But, people need to be able to see higher level content and lower level content. And, I've been able to predict things, been right about things, called things in terms of the year of or whatever it is over and over and over again. And, I don't have to pat myself on the back because the number one asset that I have is my willingness and the efficiency of the Sajmark system to connect me to my source, to my soul, connecting to the divinity within me. And it works. Like you can see, it works. It's been documented over and over again by how often I get things right, how often I see things. I mean, I'm shown things by God because I work at it, right? And whatever other abilities I have, humor, the various personality traits, those are also enhanced by a divine connection, the transmission and the Sajmarg system, the utilization of the divine energy for the transformation of man, this, God's love. It is transformative and it's elevating and it's reflected in my videos. And, I'm growing as a video creator. And, it's not my fault or not my problem if audience members don't appreciate that and don't see it. And they're too oblivious and they need like somebody like Trump to tell, Trump's biggest asset is convincing people by him saying over and over again how great he is. And he's not fucking great. He's not smart. He's not a good person. He's a little bit funny, but not really funny. He's not like he does some remedial version of stand-up comedy. A couple of his bits are okay, especially earlier. Now, not so much, as he's gotten worse and older. But he's basically a piece of shit businessman. He's a piece of shit husband and father. He's a piece of shit politician. I mean, he's just a low-level person on all levels. But he's great at bragging and convincing people how great he is, especially desperate people that have no other recourse, because he's the only one out there to acknowledge their faulty worldview and their dumb fuckery and not call them on their dumb fuckery, right? And so they're desperate for somebody like Trump to come in and validate them, and so they're willing to give him a huge chasm of ignoring his behaviors, a free pass on so many different things. He's shown you over and over again that he's a piece of shit, right? You just don't want to see it, because the alternative is the system is fucked, and there's no way out of it, right? That there's no solution to this problem, and things are just going to collapse until the system gets worse. So people don't want to hear that shit, so they go listen to somebody else who is going to lie to them just like Trump does, in the guise of being alternative media and being a truther. But in that, right, now that people are starting to question the fucking Ketchup Gate bullshit thing, and they're going to get more views than I am, and I'm not bitter about that. I mean, but they'll get more attention, and they'll walk around, like with their chest out and saying how great they are, when I had this on the first fucking day. And any good truther would. And anybody with any kind of insight would see that it was fake as fuck. It was so fucking fake. And I said to my wife, oh, this is fake as fuck. It's WWE. And I'll go through a description of that in a moment. But here's the comment from, let me find it here, from my viewer who sent me this video clip I'm about to show you. And the person, today I saw a video about mass deportation on the Jimmy Dore show. A guest host took your Ketchup Gate bit. He said it at the attempt on Trump had a McDonald's ketchup packet. I'll show you the clip in a second. And then, as always, other truthers are late to the party, and we heard it first from you, Paul. Thanks for all you do. And the guy sent me a good an email with a timestamp, which I appreciate, because that made it easy on me, because I'm lazy and like fucking. But it's lucky he sent the comment too, because I saw what he sent me, but I didn't scroll up to where he described it, because the fucking Facebook Messenger app squeezes everything so much now, and that you can't see everything. It just sucks. I don't want to get into a whole thing on that. But luckily, the guy sent me a comment, because I didn't know what he was sending me. I watched the beginning of the Jimmy Dore thing, and then when he sent me this comment, I went back to the message, and whatever. So there was that. But without further ado, let's get to that piece here. So a lot of my viewers like Jimmy Dore, and I kind of like Jimmy Dore. I listened to him a little bit. He seems to do a good job. I like that guy Kurt Metzger. He was Kerp on he was sidekick to Kyle Dunnigan. And I saw the interview Kerp did with Joe Rogan. He's a little bit more of a truther than some of the other comedians. I remember that guy from I think he auditioned for one of those the comedy reality TV show, whatever it was, Last Comic Standing, which I really liked that show, and I was sorry that they just degraded it over time and canceled it. But it was kind of one of the better reality TV shows, because comedians are interesting, right? But Jimmy Dore, he endorsed so much. Like, somebody sent me a clip of him just slathering over Trump for his bravery. A bunch of these truther clips. People sent me these things, and it was hard to watch them, and not only, not question the Ketchup Gate thing, but to, to go all in and praise Trump for something that was so fake. And so these two guys, I guess, are guest hosts of the show. I don't know who they are.
Now is under construction and getting done pretty quickly.
Well, hey, man, this is why I keep saying That wasn't no bullet, man. That was a McDonald's pack of ketchup
No.
slapped on his ear, man. It slapped on his ear. Come on. Isn't
Now, I don't know if the guy got this from me. You know, there's parallel thinking. You know, some people come up with the same idea. Like, you know, I thought up the name Ghislaine Maxwell. You know, it's pronounced Ghislaine, but it looks like Ghislaine. And, you know, so many other people said the same thing. And I know they didn't all get it from me. I mean, there's things like that where, you know, people come up with the same jokes, the same ideas. There's, you know, some of that happened with the Trump thing. And so there were some memes out there where there's ketchup on Trump's ear. But I was by far the first because it took, I don't know how many people came out and made videos and said that was fake as fuck. But I knew when I saw it. And I made a video when I saw it. You can go to my playlist, and I document all these things in the playlist, which I'm going to talk about. I'm going to describe what I found out in these videos. And the evidence, at least circumstantial evidence, is pretty overwhelming. And people with common sense can see it's fake as fuck. And so I'll describe that, you know, when I get to the voiceover portion. But, you know, and he doesn't do as good a job either, right? Like, I have a whole thing.
this the Bill Gates mark of the beast shit that so many people who voted for Trump are so worried about?
Yeah.
So anyway, Russell Dobler and Keaton Weiss, Jimmy Dore show. So anyways, whatever. But again, why not get it? Why not get it when it's breaking? Why not get this truth when it first comes out? Like, people have to wait till Trump fails on Epstein to start questioning something that, you know, they had doubts on from the beginning. And how many Trumpers and people told me I was full of shit because they couldn't even question something that was so obvious, right? And here's the other piece here. So one of my viewers sent me this. This is, well, it's self-explanatory. A lot of people are now covering this as, you know, some kind of question. There's this guy here that's walking behind here, a staffer, and what's he doing here? So there's people here that are supposed to be protecting Trump. And I don't know if they've, like, Trump is down there. Remember, there are a bunch of people stormed the stage. What's this guy doing? Where did he come from? Was he handing Trump ketchup packs? You know, so everyone's just questioning this guy.
Oh no.
Oh no, oh no, oh no, 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 no. This is the fucking guy right here, Jesus Christ.
Oh no.
Oh no,
No.
no.
Either that or they're covering. We don't know. Either that or they're covering him. We love you. We love you, President Trump.
We love you, President Trump. We love you so much, bro. Bro, we love you so much, bro. I can't live without you, President Trump. Don't die on us, President Trump. Don't die on us. Please, President Trump, don't be dead. Come on, President Trump. We love you, bro, bro.
We don't know. Either that or they're covering him. We love you. We love you, President Trump.
We love you.
We love you. We love you, President Trump. We love you. Yes. 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 We love you, President Trump. No. Oh, no, he's shot. He's shot.
He shot.
Oh,
Who did it? Who did that? Who shot him? Did you shoot him? Who did shot him? Fuck.
it could just be his ear.
Could be just his ear. It could be almost nothing. Could be just like fucking ketchup on his ear.
It could just be his ear.
Could be just his ear, bro. Bro, it's just his ear.
He's walking.
He's walking. He's walking on his own. He walks right out of there. Look at, he's pumping his fist like he's on WWE. They're letting him. We all saw his head multiple times. And if there was a second shooter anywhere in this audience, they would have had a fucking clean shot of his head because Secret Service failed in their job because it's a fake fucking stunt bullshit thing. And there's ketchup on his ear. And now they're going to put a Band-Aid on a non-existent cut because he's too much of a pussy to get a part of his ear removed to make it look legitimate. And he went on Joe Rogan and showed he had zero scar because he wasn't cut at all because this thing was fake as fuck.
Dude, that's fucking wild.
All right. So all these things, and remember these cranes were in the way on the other side as well. That would prohibit someone from taking a clear shot. Right. There's probably so many more videos where you could see that from where Trump was on the stage here. So he got shot from this direction, and there's cranes and shit over here, and there's I've gone through this already. There was no clean shot for this guy. Like, it didn't happen. There was no. You have just a whole fake fucking thing. It was staged. Look at all these people up here with their fucking cameras, making sure they got all those shots of Trump, and the blood was dry by the time the ketchup was dry by the time he stood up. Let me go through it. Let me go through my summation here, because I want to, this is one of my "I told you so" videos. So the majority of truth are when there's a conspiracy theory. What is the number one argument that you'll hear from your relatives and other people? Side, oh, you don't have the facts, or the people who are in charge of the official story say you're full of shit, which is, like a lame argument. But an even lamer argument is, oh, they could never pull that off. They could never pull that off. There's too many people involved. Somebody would have said something. The Secret Service would be in on it. These types of things. So these are just, non-factual arguments, right? If you throw out the official story, because the official story is never believable, because the people in charge of the official story, the government, the media, and everyone else is proven liars and deceivers and people who have conspired to do other things, cover up things over and over again, give out misinformation. And then we have intelligence community that their whole job is to lie to you and lie to other people, right? And so you can throw out that argument that conspiracies can't be pulled off. There was over 500,000 people involved in the Manhattan Project, and nobody knew that there was an atomic bomb until it came out. They were working on the atomic bomb, and nobody knew about it. And all these people kept it secret, right? So that thing can be thrown out because that's not a legitimate argument. The other thing is that people wouldn't do something so evil, or that Trump wouldn't be a part of that because he has so much character. And Trump's a lying piece of shit. He's one of the biggest liars. He's a paid actor. He's appeared in movies and TV shows. He's done WWE stage events. And he's done that bullshit thing, which I've shown over and over again, where politicians go out and somebody faints in the audience, like fake faints, and they take care of the person. It's so performative. It's so staged. It's so fake. And they've all done this thing. They all do political theater, political stagecraft. And so this idea that it's too big for people to get away with, they would never even try it, that's blown up because it's been done over and over again. And, everything's a deception. Now, media, and TVs and TV shows and movies, all these things, they're all illusions. They're all vast illusions, and there's all these ways that you're being deceived one way or another. People are liars and will lie about anything. And will get away with lies because people will believe shit. So all of that stuff can be thrown out, right? The two answer to these questions are, would Trump do something like this? And he totally would and has before. And so Trump would do anything. Take, for example, him finding out that J.D. Vance calls the mayor of Springfield, Ohio, a short time after this, and says to the guy, there's this rumor going around in the internet that these Haitian immigrants are eating dogs and cats. And the guy says, no, that's no truth to that at all. And J.D. Vance tells Trump this, and Trump doesn't care. And he goes on the debate and just out and out lies about it. He's done this time and time again. He just out and out lies about shit. And so the guy has no moral compass. And not only Trump, but all these other people would pull these things off. So the second piece is, well, how could he get away with it? Well, nobody involved with this is going to say they did this. And it would throw the whole political system into a tailspin, because if it came out that Trump staged this event, then it would come out that all these other events were staged as well. And so when one thing's a hoax like this, you can kind of blame it on Trump, but the Secret Service was involved, the media was involved, there were so many people that were complicit. That would mean that they've allowed these other things, they've participated in other things, which would come out. And before you know it, people would lose all faith in the government and the media, even beyond what they have now. And so they could totally pull this off. The answer is yes. They could totally pull this off, right? And so you have to throw out the whole official story because all these people would go along with this because they've gone along with these hoaxes before. They've gone along with lies. Weapons of mass destruction that Saddam Hussein had that was total bullshit, that Colin Powell went in front of the UN. It turned out he had none of these things. And they went into this war post 9/11 when Saddam Hussein had nothing to do with 9/11. I mean, that was all bullshit. And there's been time and time again where there's been these massive deceptions perpetrated on the American people, including the Santa Claus deception that almost everybody agrees with. People go along with lies if they're scared of what happens when they tell the truth and they don't want to be ostracized. So they just go along with it, like even if they don't feel good about it, they just go along with it. People lying to their kids about Santa Claus because everybody does it. And so this is all part of it. So they could totally do it, and Trump would totally do it. And so you have to look at what you just saw. And so when I first heard about this, my wife and I were out going for a walk, and we heard that somewhere, it was later in the day when we realized it was, we heard someone had fired a shot at Trump, and then we looked at it, and I'm like, oh, it's a real video. It's like a real thing. Like Trump went down, he's like bleeding and shit. My wife saw it, and she was surprised. And then I looked at the event, and I went, oh my God, this is so fucking fake. This looks like a WWE staged event. And the reason I said that was Trump went for the big kahuna. When he got up and pumped his fist, fight, 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 and mouthed those words, and I saw him do this years ago when he announced Eminem's fake candidacy for the presidency, and all the people in the audience were saying shady, Slim Shady, 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 shady. And Trump was mouthing the words, but you could tell he wasn't saying anything. He was doing the same thing. You could hear that there was a hot mic that caught him saying this shit about how he needed his shoes. But he mouthed the words fight, 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 and he made sure he got that in there, like it was part of the performance. And it was the big part of the performance because it made him look like a badass, that someone just took a shot at him, and he wasn't in a state of shock, and he wasn't, cowering underneath the armpits of the Secret Service. He was putting his big fucking pumpkin head out there and pumping his fists and defiantly with blood dripping down his ears like some fucking tough guy going, fight, 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 fucking fight. I'm fucking fighting. And they're trying to get me. And they're trying to put me down, the fucking Democrats and the liberals. But it turned out that the guy was a myth. We'll get into all that shit about the shooter. But right then I knew it was fake. Had he not gone for the blood thing, it would be harder to tell. If he had not gone for the standing up and saying fight, fight, fight. But I saw that it looked like it was the WWE thing. And later on I would find out that the WWE thing was something that Trump loved and that he was a part of, and that they were going to roll this thing out of the convention. So, my initial reaction was immediately confirmed at the Republican convention. So that's the first part. Like, I could tell it was fake. This thing is fucking fake because I've seen pro wrestling before, and this was pro wrestling level fakeness, right? This was like a B-level movie, a C-level movie with, that Vince McMahon had written and scripted. It was totally WWE. There's nobody can deny it. Nobody can fucking deny it. Okay, continuing on. Today is Sunday, July 20th. I just added the Vince McMahon video I did on Netflix, special of Vince McMahon, that was so Trump, and Trump was involved in it. I know how much Trump was involved in it, but since then he's hired Linda McMahon, who was the CEO of WWE, Vince McMahon's wife, as Secretary of Education. She has zero experience. She's a real dope. She comes off really kind of stupid, and it's just fucking gross. And there's just grossness in the WWE. We'll get back to the Trump thing in a second here. But in that show, Vince McMahon's daughter, Stephanie McMahon, I followed Vince McMahon when I was a kid. The wrestling was divided up amongst sections of the country. And I was in Connecticut, and New York and Boston, and Connecticut was Vince McMahon's dad's region. But there's all this bogus fake wrestling kind of shows across the country, and Vince McMahon just was good at making his the number one across. He made his national, right? So I didn't even know this, but I knew it was fake. A couple of my friends went to a wrestling match and they saw the guy counting one of the wrestlers 1, 2, 3, and he turned around and hit the guy. There's little kids realizing the thing's fake, and he threw a nut at he was eating whatever peanuts or something. He threw it at a wrestler to hit him in the head, and some guy came up and said, "Don't you throw shit at the wrestlers." But we all knew it was fake as kids, and it was I stopped watching it. Like I just couldn't. It sucked. It was too dumb for me. I mean, as a little kid, I don't know when I was like, this is just too dumb for me. And I knew about it from then on, but I wasn't a fan, didn't follow it. But this thing happened with his daughter, and I knew that she got asked in the face by some big like Samoan guy or something, some guy, big fat guy with cellulite, and he put her face in the crack of his ass, and this was his daughter, right? And they were saying in the show that she would do anything for the show. Like she ended up he had a son, and he chose his daughter and her wrestling husband, I think his name is Triple H, as the CEOs of the company. And he had a storyline. There's one thing she wouldn't do, which was Vince McMahon impregnates her. Vince McMahon came up with a storyline where he impregnated his own daughter. And the level of sexual depravity and things and icky stuff that was like gross sexual stuff and things like that, they were pushing on, an audience which was made up partially of children and just gross fucking weird shit, right? And Trump played into these storylines. And so I didn't know any of all that when this fake assassination happened, but I said to my wife, this is like WWE wrestling bullshit, right? And then it came out a few days later, there was the Republican National Convention. And I had no idea about this, but Trump had Hulk Hogan there, and everything about it was WWE. He had Dana White, who was a UFC guy who, is a fight promoter, and he came out and gave a speech to introduce Trump, and Hulk Hogan gave the speech before that, and Kid Rock was there. And I'm like, oh my God, they really went for it. So, this thing with him coming out with a bandage, and they had people in the audience wearing bandages on their ear, and we'll get into the bandage case in a second. And, it just played perfectly into this WWE style moment where they had these gaudy Trump letters where he came out, and there's this big sign of Trump, with whatchamacallit, Hulk Hogan riling up the crowd, and Trump comes out, and there's a big Trump. It just says Trump in big letters. Trump loves his fucking name more than anybody else. Like he loves his name. Like he loves his name more than anybody else loves their name. He puts his name on everything. Big gaudy Trump Hotel and Trump, Trump, Trump. He used to say, there's a saying, Trump is Trump. And nobody said it. Like he said it like at a show, and I knew that nobody else said it. that Trump was always the highest level of, but it's always gaudy shit. It was always over the top, glitzy, bedazzled, just lowbrow, nouveau riche type of shit that he did. But Trump loves a performance, and Vince McMahon is Trump in a different form. Somebody who is a flim-flam man, a carnival barker. And Trump had this moment, which I had no idea, in WWE when I started saying this. So my initial reaction was to the shooting was, this is WWE. And then he had this WWE style inauguration. And then people started sending me clips that Trump was in this, it was with Vince McMahon and in this WWE thing that he did. Like he fought Vince McMahon and he won in a wrestling match, and Vince McMahon had to shave his head. And Trump was totally into it. He's a big fan of it. He was like, he had, business relationship with Vince McMahon. He loved this shit. He loved the cheer of the crowd as coming out as Trump to these people who are Trump lovers as wrestlers, wrestling fans. And this was just like his rallies. And so, of course, this was performative because he wanted a big moment. He needed this thing where he could come out with this bandage on his ear and say, fight, 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 and all the rest of it. And so, there was this WWE connection. And his speech, him coming out with his fucking maxi pad on his ear, and him being able to pump his fist in the air and say, fight, 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 was like just tailor made for his, his lowbrow fucking messages and just all of it. Like, who was he fighting against? Because the shooter was this innocuous person who had no, like almost didn't exist. The ultimate patsy, some young disgruntled guy who seemed to be neither Democrat or Republican and didn't have any affiliation with the organizations that Trump was trying to say were trying to get him. Like the deep state, the guy wasn't deep state at all. And Trump didn't try to push that narrative, even though it was there. Like they're trying to take him, they tried to kill him. And then, of course, the conspiracy theory, dope right-wing people bought into that shit. That somehow this was a deep state attempt at Trump. When there was no evidence to support that at all, and Trump wasn't even pushing that narrative. With these two, they end up saying there was 3 assassination attempts, right? And there's been nothing since. Nothing on it, right? Nothing on the whole thing. I mean, Trump doesn't even talk about it anymore. I mean, this is a big event. This was Trump's, magnum opus moment, like where he was able to come up from the ground bleeding and pump his fist in the air and yell, fight, fight, fight. And they were, they played it during this convention and it kind of disappeared. And we'll get into the Secret Service stuff in a moment. But let's go to the Band-Aid gate. I dubbed this term Band-Aid gate. So Trump would later go on a couple interviews and say that he looked down at he was being shot, he looked down at his hand and there was blood on his ear. Blood on his hand. And he said, the ear bleeds like anything. There's blood gushing out all over the place. And, there was video of it and none of that shit happened. And so what really happened, and he talked about the ear bleeding so much, right? He said something about the ear bleeding. And so, he went on Sean Hannity and with J.D. Vance, and he had this, now it's a smaller bandage. It was like 7 days after it was like maybe the last day after the convention, and he put on a smaller bandage on the top of his ear. So they're saying it was the top of his ear, and that it was nicked by a bullet. And he said he looked down his hands, he saw blood, and he got up, and there's blood everywhere. So what really happened was he looked down his hand, and there's no blood. And so that must have been part of the performance. Like he looked at his hand, I don't know what they thought was going to happen, but there was no blood on his hand. And then he went down the ground, and he came up, and there was blood. But when you see from the pictures, like all the pictures that were, of that time, the blood is dry. It's no longer dripping. And so it's like ketchup they squirted out his ear because it wasn't coming out of anything. It wasn't bleeding when he got up. So the shot happened, the alleged shot happened. He grabbed his ear, looked at his hand, you could see that, and then went down to the ground. But there was no blood, in his hand. And then he gets up and the blood's already dry. And so the pictures of him when he's walking off the stage, the various still frames, there's just nothing there. There's no blood. And so that was weird because it was, obviously it stopped bleeding, which didn't go with anything he said. And so what it looked like it didn't look like this is what happened, but he looked like he went down to the ground and they squirted something in his ear and he got up and it was dry. It was already, now, it's not, it's going to drip down, whatever. And there wasn't blood everywhere. There was not blood on his shirt. There was just this, like something got squirted on his ear. They put some ketchup on his ear. And then he got up and it wasn't there anymore. And then it came out that he went to the hospital, but there was no, there was no bleeding or it didn't need stitches. No stitches were needed. So he didn't have to go to the hospital. He didn't have to do anything. So, there was a scene of him coming into the hospital there in Pennsylvania, people filming him and, the whole thing. And his doctor said that the cut was less than 2 centimeters, which meant there was no cut at all. It could less than, there was no existing cut. Like he would later go on Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan would say, where's the cut on your ear? And Trump would say, well, it's just, it's just a little bit. There's nothing, no scar, no anything, just a little bit, little bit. Like, let me show that clip here.
Right over here.
Oh, it's a tiny little
See,
mark.
it zicked right there.
Yeah. But it healed up pretty fucking good.
Well, it's pretty good. Yeah, it's little.
No, you didn't
it's
get
a little bit.
cauliflower
No,
ear.
no. The point of the bullet was a
Boy.
little of the S, but you see the thing's taken off a little bit.
So there was definitely acting. So you can say he was shot. Like, you could say that. I can't. I don't believe he was shot. I don't believe anything happened. I don't believe he was bleeding. I think it's Ketchup, right? So this is where Ketchup Gate came in, but also Band-Aid Gate. So I coined the terms, the hashtags Ketchup Gate and Band-Aid Gate, because he didn't need a Band-Aid. So when I'm doing farm work, I get cut all the time. And half the time I don't even know until I look down and I'm bleeding, mostly from the hands, but, it could be anything else, right? I mean, the other day I was going by something on my tractor, and we have these wild blackberries, and they got pretty bad thorns. And something got my arm when I was driving by it, and it just ripped into the, it was like, whatever it is. Like, I look at it and go, do I need to put a Band-Aid on it? Otherwise, I'm just going to keep on working if it's not going to get dirty or whatever it is, right? And the pain is almost non-existent, right? You get these little nicks, these little cuts, and some of them hurt worse than others, but this didn't hurt at all because there's no blood, there was no anything. But Trump made a big deal about wearing a bandage to a cut that didn't even need stitches. So what happened was he wore the maxi pad covering up his whole ear. So it was like silly because there's nothing there. He didn't need even a Band-Aid because it stopped bleeding by the time he got up, when he stood up. And he didn't need to go to the doctor. So they bring the doctor because he's the president, sure, whatever. But there's no stitches. And then he doesn't need anything on there. Now, if he shows you his ear, like, no one knew it was under that fucking maxi pad, right? So he comes out on his, day 4, Thursday of the last day. They bring all the other people out, and then they introduce their candidate. And Trump comes out with the big WWE bullshit and the whole big Trump thing, and he pumps his fist, and he's got his thing on, and they play that fucking stupid ass "I'm Proud to Be American" bullshit song. And he comes out and he's pumping his fist, and he's, doing his Trump shit, right? And they cover up his ear, because if they showed you that there was nothing there, then you would be like, well, there's nothing there. And I was waiting for the day he took the bandage off, which would come 13 days after he was shot, a whole 2 weeks. So on a cut, I mean, he's the biggest pussy of all time, right? Because on a cut that stopped bleeding and was healed probably the day after or 2 days after he was shot, like if it was a real cut, he would, with no scar, you can see that there's nothing there. Like, Joe Rogan's like, yeah, there's nothing there. And Joe Rogan should have followed up with it, but he's, and even should have looked at him like, this guy faked that whole fucking thing. And that thing that he faked was when everyone was saying Trump was such a badass. But, there's nothing fucking there. So he puts this big maxi pad. Now, if Trump's ear got mutilated, like it was just wrecked, nobody wants to look at a president with some fucked up ear, right? Like, like Kennedy's voice, RFK Jr.'s voice. There's things that make you kind of unelectable. Like some kind of thing that, like you're just, if it's like some bullet just obliterated his ear, right? There's a big hole through it. So it was this weird thing that they were walking and of course Trump's too much of a pussy to have them take out a little chunk of his ear, which would make it a little bit believable. It would be kind of hard to dispute if there was some big chunk out of his ear, right? I mean, I got my ears pierced, and one ear pierced a long time ago. And, people get all these weird ear piercings now. They mutilate their fucking ears. These are just dopey, poser, fake, effeminate, like whatever they call those guys, metrosexual. What's that term they have for them? Hipster. These hipsters or whatever they're called, right? And hipsters would be regarded as pussies, but they can have their ears messed up, right? Whatever these, people who get these, they mutilate their ears. And Trump couldn't get a little chunk of just a tiny bit surgically removed, where they would be like, wow, this is where the bullet hit, right? Trump was too much of a pussy to even do that. And he didn't need a bandage. He didn't need a bandage on day 1. He didn't certainly need it on day 13. So they went from this thing where it was a big maxi pad to where he had a specific bandage when he went on the interview with Sean Hannity and they addressed the shooting, and J.D. Vance was there, right? And I said they're gonna have to take the bandage off, and there's gonna be nothing there, and you can see it in my videos. I had all these videos on it, Ketchup Gate and Band-Aid Gate. And it's performative that he put a Band-Aid on it all. When you put a Band-Aid on and you don't need it, that's like fucking like being a total pussy, right? Like it's just, when you're looking for sympathy, look at this, right? Like it's just, you're trying to milk something and look for sympathy and all this stuff. So they hit his ear, on the convention, and then they put a little bandage on, and then he goes on Joe Rogan and says, yeah, you can't even see a scar. And like by that time, they're not even talking about this thing anymore. They barely talk about Trump's assassination anymore at all by the time he's on Joe Rogan, and now not at all. So, you can say he got shot. You could say that, based in the official story. But he didn't need a fucking bandage, and he certainly didn't need that maxi pad that's covering his whole fucking ear. So that's performative, right? It's totally performative. He's performing then. He's faking for his audience. He's milking it. It's stagecraft. It's political theater. The bandage is. Because he didn't need a bandage at any time. But if they took the bandage off, if he came out with his ear not cut, right? It was covering up the fact that he hadn't been shot. Then everyone would be like, oh, there was nothing, so that whole, he shits on his whole moment. So, he had to come out pumping his fist, so they had to put a bandage on his ear to remind him that he was fucking, he should get a Purple Heart, right? He's wounded in fucking the act of, And so, like, that's part 1. And so, that's enough right there. The bandage and the ketchup thing and all that shit, him lying about that, that's enough right there to say it's fake. But then there's so much more after that. Let's go with the angle of the bullet next. So I'm taking these clips from previous videos that I made. This playlist now that has like 24 videos in it. And the whole playlist is worth watching for somebody who is just realizing that the Trump assassination attempt was fake, which has so many different implications to all of it. But there's people now who are Trumpers, who have Trumper followers, Trumper fake truthers, who are going to come on board with this thing. And it's going to be like they discovered it. Like this is going to be the whole thing. I mean, they're even saying shit like that they're breaking the story. And, I was there day 1. And this is, I've been in the truth community, since 2007, I've had this YouTube channel. But I started doing this exclusively in 2014 as a job. And I broke all these various stories. Like there's genres of truther videos. The Michelle Obama is possibly a dude. That was started by me. Kind of by me. I watched another video. So, a video that I saw that, had this idea. So it wasn't my idea. But I made the best video about this subject. And then I figured out that, Dave Chappelle had this thing where he said black actors had to put on a dress, but I figured out that all A-list actors, George Clooney, Brad Pitt, Matt Damon, any of these, all these other actors, not just ones that were in Ocean 12. I mean, all these celebrity actors, James Franco, all these, John Wayne even, they had to put on dresses. It was like some kind of Freemasonic Illuminati ritual of, emasculation. And then, then there was, it wasn't just black guys, it was white guys. And, it was pretty much all pervasive. Like everyone had to do it. It was like a rite of passage. And then, of course, all that stuff that happened with the Caitlyn Jenner thing, all that stuff that came afterwards. And I was, I had cutting edge videos about this when it was happening. Like before, pretty much anyone. Or if I wasn't the first, I was, amongst the people that were, who were on top of this when it started. And I'm saying this not because I'm like trying to brag about my channel or me or whatever, because of the system I use to evaluate reality. Like this is, the meditative system I use, which is about connecting to divinity and allowing God to show you what you need to see. And it's so much more effective than any other form of research or any other form of doing all this stuff. Like it just comes to me and I see it. Like I just see it. I saw that Trump's thing was fake. Some of it's my personality, some of it's me doing this work, some of it's my training as a counselor and a preceptor in the Sajmarg meditation. Some of these things are, specific to my development as a person, being dyslexic and introverted and, these things. But the most of it has to do with my connection to divinity and allowing, the divine essence that exists within all of us to show me what I need to see, right? To penetrate through all these things. And I've, time and time again, have been a trendsetter in the truth community and getting there way beforehand. The problem is that I say things that nobody wants to hear. I say things about people's religion. I say things about how the system is fucked and there's no way of fixing it. People try to call me black-pilled, but it's just being a realist. Like this system is degrading people. People are getting worse and worse, and that's the first indicator. But the clarity that I have is unmatched in the truth community about these things. It just is, because I don't give a shit. Like I don't care about any of this stuff. Like I'm willing to be a conduit for divine energy and divine consciousness. And I say things all the time. Like here is a comment here. Let me see if I think it's this one here, maybe. I was literally sitting around talking about this very subject, truth lies, with friends last night. This is not the first time I've had a conversation with people, and your next talk covers this subject. It's a regular occurrence, goosebump stuff. Thanks, Paul. And it's Epstein's bestie. Trump calls MAGA dumb fucks and disavows them. I think I had a beginning thing about talking about, people in the truth community not looking for truth within their own lives, not confronting their own bullshit, just looking at other people, having to look at other people, which is an epic talk. And there's these epic talks that I have. And it's very consistent with Sajmarg teaching. Sajmarg, not practice, the meditation that I do. We'd have this group sitting every week, and then someone would read some of the literature from the system. And so many times people would be in there struggling with something in their life, and the reading would be just for them, or maybe three people that were all struggling with the same thing. It was like beyond, like people it almost like would freak you out how many times it would happen, that there was like some kind of connectivity in the readings of the system, and so many other talks and things that had happened, beyond my experience, beyond my whatever I do here on YouTube. I mean, this is a thing that happens when you're connected to divinity. There's ways that messages come to you. You hear things that you need to hear, or people will all kind of see things in a similar way. They'll have a spiritual experience all across the world, different people. And it's part of the system, right? Beyond, this isn't me talking about me. It's talking about the system and God, the pursuit of God realization itself, right? And people will try to dismiss what I do here because they don't want to hear those things. They don't want to hear that they have to connect to their soul. They don't want to hear that they have to confront their own bullshit. They don't want to hear any of these things. They don't want to hear that the system is not fixable. They just want to, believe in some bullshit person like Trump that's going to tell them what they want to hear. And that's the problem with humanity. And so that's why I'm making this playlist, to show people that I was here. And it could have been seen back then, and why didn't you see it? If you're a truther making truther content, why did you not see this? What are you doing what am I doing that's better than what you're doing, right? And that's the connection with the divinity within. And when you have that, it's just superior to any other thing. And so the next piece to this thing was that if you're going to have the angle of the shot to hit Trump on the tip of his ear, on his the top of his ear, it has to be perpendicular. And really, it didn't like hit his whole ear. It nicked, like he's saying with Joe Rogan, it nicked his ear. Of course, this didn't happen. But for a shot like that to happen, it would have to hit his ear almost, in a miracle shot, almost like the bullet had to curve. Because if his head is tilted too much one way, it's going to hit his ear and then go out the back of his head. If it's tilted too much the other way, it's going to hit his frontal lobe, like above the eye, and then hit his ear, it's the angle of the bullet. It has to be perfect. So Trump tried to say that the sign saved his life. He had this chart up there about immigration, and he was turning towards that chart. And that moment that he turned towards the chart, the guy hit the shot, and it was just this miracle shot. Had he not turned, that chart saved his life, all these things. But if you look at where the chart was, you look at where the shooter was positioned, the shooter didn't have a direct line of sight to Trump's ear. I mean, it's an impossible shot. And this guy was a novice. He wasn't a professional, shooter or hitman. And he didn't have a scope on his gun. He had the sights that came with the gun. So it was like 140, 150 yard shot from a guy who's never killed anybody before. And he was, there was all this other stuff that came out later, that the snipers that were working for the government, the Secret Service snipers, the counter snipers that were on top of the roof, were closer to Trump, and they spotted the guy. The guy came into the venue with a rangefinder, because you need a rangefinder to figure out how far it was from his shot. He got access to this roof that the Secret Service, and we'll get into the Secret Service debacle next, that, all these things had to happen for this miracle shot to take place, right? And that he was pointing his gun at people who were seeing him on the roof, that citizens were pointing out that he was on the roof, cops were saying he was on the roof, and the snipers had him in their sight. They saw he had a gun, they saw he was on the roof, but they waited till he fired shots before they killed him. And so all that is bogus, right? But there was no way that he could nick his ear. But really, it had to be Trump's ear, right? Like anything else was going to be more subject, like it would hit his hand, whatever it was, right? Hit his shoulder. Like there was no, it had to be somewhere around his head, because it's like, oh my God, he just missed killing you. If he hits his hand, it's like, well, that's a bad shot. His hand is nowhere near his head, right? Like it had to hit his ear. Like his ear was the perfect, so when they concocted this story, the ear just made sense, because it was like, oh my God, they just missed your head. A centimeter over there, it would have went through your brain, right? Really wouldn't have. It would have went through the side of his skull, right. The brain is below the ear there, right? Kind of, wherever they say it hit him. But it's like, so close to a headshot that it'd be like, you almost died. Like it was a miracle. And, Trump called it a miracle bullet, miracle shot, this stuff that, all the things that Trump said later. But it's all BS, right? It's not true. None of it's true. Because all these failures had to happen with the Secret Service, and all this stuff had to happen for a shot that the guy never had the angle. The guy, if you look at, I showed this over and over again in videos, and it just all this information started to come out. Plus there's like construction equipment and cranes and shit, and there's all this stuff in the line of sight of the guy who was shooting at Trump. It was just, it didn't happen, right? Like it was, I mean, we know that the ear was a bogus thing, but now we see that the bullet couldn't even have hit him because of where the shooter would have had to be positioned for the bullet to somehow miss Trump's enormous head and nick his little ear, right? So that was the ear part. So the next part was a Secret Service failure. They fired the woman in charge of the Secret Service. It was considered an epic failure, but Trump just praised them. And they didn't look like real Secret Service. They looked like guys dressed up for a Vince McMahon WWE event. I mean, it's like kind of fucked up how, not Secret Service they looked like. But even Joe Scarborough pointed out the protocols that they broke. So the first thing was, this from any kind of movie where the Secret Service are a part of it, like a movie about Secret Service. You have these movies where Secret Service are the hero. And if anything is realistic, in TV shows and movies, it's that you never know if there's more than one shooter. There's often more than one shooter. And so when they took down the first shooter, they would have to assume that somebody else in the crowd might also be a shooter. Like everybody becomes a suspect then, a potential assassin. And so once the first guy is down, they got to get Trump off the stage or they got to get everyone out of there. Now, I think they probably would have laid on top of Trump so that there's no way any bullets could penetrate into him. And they would have told the crowd to leave. I mean, the crowd should have panicked and be leaving like that. You know, whatever happened there, you know, Trump bragged on his crowd that they just stayed there because they were just concerned about him and not themselves. I mean, Trump, you know, made a big deal about that. But, you know, the reality is they needed to get rid of the crowd so Trump could leave without being shot again. But instead, they let him walk to the car, exposing his big, giant fucking head to multiple angles as he got up and he started to pump his fist and say, fight, 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 you know, all the way to the car where he got up on the car. He stood up by the car and he, you know, they let him stand up and, you know, he stood in the step that leads to you sitting down in the, you know, the floor panel, the floorboard or whatever it's called. He stood up there and exposed his head one last time to any number of potential secondary shooters. And it was a catastrophic failure on every level between local law enforcement and the Secret Service. There was multiple problems that they had. It all came out, right? It was covered by many media sources, news sources, mainstream news even. And, you know, that was a conspiracy in itself. Why was this failure and why did they look so unprofessional? Why did they let him pop his head up and things like this? Let me get my shoes on, right? All these things. And so, you know, he becomes no longer a guy who's ordering them around, but a guy who's, you know, they're manhandling him and manipulating him and pushing his head fucking down to keep him out of the line of fire. But they didn't do that at all. And Trump has done nothing but praise them. Now, Trump always is big to accuse people and to criticize people, especially in the federal government, especially since these Secret Service guys were Joe Biden's Secret Service. And he could have made a big deal about this, but didn't because they were part of the act. And if he did do that, they might get pissed off and say, yeah, this is, I mean, whatever, expose that, you know, he couldn't shit on the Secret Service because they went along with this fucking scam. But it was a debacle on every fucking level. So there's a whole playlist here. I'm going to put this at the top of the playlist. And, you know, you could go through the videos in order. People who are really interested want to do a deep dive into this thing because there's details, more details about all the things I've talked about here and then other things I didn't talk about here. But there's, you know, basic principles. There's basic, you know, if you're doing a sales job, there is things that you have to counter arguments to go against people's resistance, their objections to buying what you're just selling them, right? And so in terms of people believing in a conspiracy, which I said in the beginning of the video, there's all these objections that people have, right? Like here's an example of some of those things. Here are some people left some comments here. Here's, this isn't the one comment I want to get to, but let me read this one first. Hi, Mr. Romano. Ketchup Gate is doing the rounds in the mainstream. Benny Johnson, I think he's a piece of shit guy. Many greetings from Slovenia. You know, that's what this video is kind of about. But here are some comments from Trumpers. Here's one's funny. Your view count is dismal. Yeah, that's not my fault. I mean, I could contribute to it. Like, I definitely could be nicer to people or, you know, more, you know, whatever. But the quality of the videos speak for themselves. If this was true, so Trump's bogus Wall Street Journal, this is the name of the video, Trump's bogus Wall Street Journal $10 billion lawsuit. The Epstein scandal has always been a Trump scandal. That's the title of the video, right? And this person writes, if this was truth, which it isn't, okay, Trump's name would have been smeared with lies 6 years ago, so cut the crap. So they're saying this thing that came out with the Epstein letter that Trump wrote, and my last video. So another person wrote this here. Why did this channel become so clickbaity and unhinged? This letter's not real, and Trump is releasing the Epstein files. Sad when people hate Trump more than truth or reality. And then another person wrote this, very similar type of comments. Here it is. I just agree, not that I wouldn't believe Trump was Epstein's guy, but if your worldview is correct, wouldn't all Trump's enemies on both sides have released the information by now? Come on. Okay, so the thing about that whole idea, when people say that Trump was persecuted for the past 6 years before the 2024 election, why didn't they get him? I've said this over and over again. Trump is their asset. They have made Trump, the Democrats and the liberal media, more than anybody else, have made Trump the centerpiece of America. Why is that? Why do they talk about Trump so much? It isn't Trump derangement syndrome. Why does Trump get so much airtime? People want attention. People want airtime. And Trump wants that more than anybody else. And whether they're talking about you in a positive way or negative way, they're talking about you, which is what Trump loves, right? Trump loves that Trump creates controversy and he says outlandish things because he wants news media time. He wants to be the center of attention. And he has been for the past, since 2015, almost, about 10 years now. We live in the land of Trump, right? Trump America. It's whether you hate him or love him, he's the centerpiece. He's the centerpiece of the Democratic platform, and he's the centerpiece of the Democratic media. And so, this is obvious. Like, why can't you see that? Like, why can't anybody see that? And so if Trump was their enemy, why are they giving him what he wants, and why can't they ever take him down? Why can't they kill him? They can kill anybody. I mean, people that control the system. You don't think they could kill Trump? They can kill anybody. And so if they tried to and failed, why wouldn't they do it again, right? And so, there's all these silly beliefs people had. And I said for years, the last 4 years before the 2024 election, when Trump was being sued and criminally prosecuted, and they were saying all these ways that they were going to lock him up and not allow him to run for election and then try to kill him eventually, right? I said, when it happens, come talk to me. Because all I see is them paving the way for a second term for Trump presidency, which is exactly what happened. Another way that I had this stuff, and you can go through so many of my old videos, and I said this over and over again, especially when it had to do with these criminal charges against him. Why isn't he in prison? The guy is a criminal. He has done criminal things. And even if he didn't, they could just make it up. They lock people up all the time. And he would have been a convicted felon, which he was anyway, and a convicted felon can't even run for president. Then he didn't even hold his hand on the Bible. So it's like, all of those things, right? And so the argument that Trump's enemies are descending on him now, the only question about it is why now? Because it's always been there. He's always been Epstein's best buddy. I just watched another video, which I'll be covering in my next video. I just watched a video where some woman who was Jeffrey Epstein's girlfriend rehashes her testimony, which she did under a lie detector, that Trump groped her. And I'll get into that in the beginning of my next video. This video will be up today on Sunday, July 20th. That'll be up 21st of July. But the argument that they would have done this already is something Trumpers come up with stupid arguments, right? And so you have to go around people's objections. You have to answer people's objections, or people have to answer them for themselves, because I don't care what you believe. I don't give a shit. It's not my problem what you believe. I just present the truth as I know it and see it, and God shows it to me, right? And so, but in terms of a conspiracy theory, for it to make sense, you have to come up with, the objection of, will people do that? Well, people will do evil shit. Will the government do that? Well, government has paid for and created bombs of such horrific nature, weapons of mass destruction. They've experimented on people. They've tortured and killed people. They've enslaved people. I mean, we look at the history of the American government and governments all around the world. They will do horrible things, and people will do horrible things. People will do the worst possible things you can imagine. There's movies, horror movies, where people do the worst possible things, right? Torture people, kill them, painfully kill them, and and any number of things, psychologically mess with them, psychological experiments, right? There's movies that where these ideas are put out there, horror movies and things like this, right? All this stuff, torture other people. People will do anything, like in terms of bad shit. Like there isn't one bad thing a person hasn't thought about doing. Some person somewhere has thought about doing or has done it. And so there's no, people wouldn't do that because the people aren't that bad or that evil. No, people are that evil, and there's some people that love that kind of stuff and they embrace it and they do it. And so yes, that will be done. So that isn't an argument against a conspiracy. The media or somebody will rat them out and they wouldn't be able to get away with it. Well, we know that that's not true either because that's happened over and over again. People have been able to keep a secret. And even if the information gets out, people don't believe it. And even if people believe it, they don't have any recourse of doing anything about it. So rich people and the elite and, the people who conspire and the intelligence agencies and the government gets away with shit all the time. Powerful people and powerful groups get away with shit all the time. Whether people know it or not, they still get away with it even if people know it because there's no accountability for people with that kind of power and money and things like this. So the only thing it comes down to, would the specific person like Trump do it? Well, we already know Trump put on a big bandage and milked this thing and pumped his fist and turned it into a political, war cry. Fight, 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 fight in the election. We know he did that. We know he's done that before. We know he's an actor. We know he's appeared in movies like Home Alone, and he also did WWE shit. So he would totally do it. Is there anything Trump wouldn't do? I mean, Trump is an evil fuck. He's a gross, evil, narcissistic fuck. He'll do anything. Would they be stupid enough to do something that they didn't need to do because Trump was going to be handed the election? Well, yeah, they were, right? Would the media go along with it? Sure. So did they have the means and the ability to do it? Yeah, they did. And so it's really about what it looks like. And if you take away all those objections, the thing looks fake as fuck. It doesn't look real. Like the only thing you could say is, no, they can't do that. They wouldn't do that. They would get away with it. And really now what it was always about, the Democrats they don't want to admit shit like this is fake because they've been faking shit forever. The liberal media and the Democrats. So if this thing's fake, they start uncovering all the other fake things. And it gives, rise to the truth community saying that all these things are fake. They don't want to validate that. So that's, they don't want it. The Democrats don't want to call bullshit on this thing with Trump because then they're crazy conspiracy theorists and they're already trying to label, right-wingers and us truthers that are legitimate truthers that are seeking the truth. They want to label us as crazy conspiracy theorists, so they don't want to embrace crazy conspiracy theory. So the only problem was the Trumpers. And the Trumpers, if this was Joe Biden, would have totally, I've said this all along, would have totally called this thing fake because it looks so fake, right? If Joe Biden did the exact same fake assassination attempt, the truth community and the Trumpers would have been all over it. But because they are blinded to Trump with their fucking bullshit hopium, right, all these things, they came up with any kind of excuse and reason why this thing was different with Trump when it was clearly fake as fuck, right? And I didn't have those blinders on. And that should account for something, but it really doesn't because people really don't want to hear the truth because they're full of shit, right? They want to hear the truth about the people they hate. They want to hear the truth about Joe Biden, or the liberal wants to hear the truth about Trump, but they don't want to confront their own bullshit. People don't want to confront their own bullshit. And so that's why this video exists. And I make these videos from time to time because people in the truth community claim to be, they woke up, but they didn't wake up. They woke up to something they already believed, which is that there's a deep state of left-wing people that are trying to ruin the government, and it isn't that at all. And that Trump isn't going to save you, and there's no difference between the right and the left. And the people who don't understand that are not truthers. They're pretenders, they're posers, they're not confronting their own bullshit, right? The bullshit about their religion, the bullshit about their political views, the bullshit about America. They're not willing to see the truth in all forms. It's easy to see the truth when it's about somebody you hate, but it's painful to see the truth about something you believe in or somebody you believe in. It's fucking painful, and I've had to go through that personally. And when and not just in terms of, things that I believe in the truth community, being, dodgy being, the number one thing, the fourth master of the Sizemore system that turned into a piece of shit, right? And somebody who, I knew personally, and it was painful and all the implications of it that were there, but it was something that I had to see. If you're seeking the truth, you have to seek it in all forms. Anyways, the playlist is there. Only spirituality will save this world. It's power of auto definitely pointing for the apocalypse, and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.